What is good, y'all? Welcome back to the Puncher's Point. Now, we already talked about Beterbiev and Bivol. Well, guess what? We were saying it's kind of missing a co-main event. Well, that co-main event, I think it's going to be a very, very underrated co-main event. Shakur Stevenson is coming back in October 12th. And who is he fighting? Is it going to be William Zepeda? Is it going to be Tank Davis? Is it going to be Pitbull Cruz? Is it going to be El Rayo? Is it going to be Rolly? Devin Haney? None of those guys. You know who it's going to be? Joe Cordina, the former featherweight champion who is moving up after his loss to Anthony Cacace. He is going to be moving up to lightweight to challenge Shakur Stevenson for the WBC belt. Now, this has been it was announced by Turki Alalshikh. It was first reported, or I first heard about it from Michael Benson, and the details you're about to receive is from the article on ESPN of none only than the one and only Mike Coppinger. So to me, the way I like to title this is it's the come up versus the comeback. So here's the thing. Shakur Stevenson, we all know about him, undefeated, WBC lightweight champion. Obviously, we know he ran the junior lightweight division for a very, very, long time. He was obviously the best junior lightweight. And then he went to lightweight and now all of a sudden he's one of the most criticized boxers. A lot of people are saying he's not exciting. He's a boring fighter. He doesn't have a lot of power. He runs away. All these types of things about Shakur Stevenson. And he had that fight with Edwin De Los Santos, very, very disappointing. And then he had the fight with Artem Harutyunyan. And a lot of people did not like that fight as well. So a lot of people started losing interest in Shakur Stevenson. So what do they do? Well, Shakur Stevenson leaves Top Rank, and now he's going to be the co-main event for Beterbiev and Bivol. And I do think this is a good step for his career because Shakur Stevenson, look, I like Shakur Stevenson. I think he's a very good defensive boxer. I think he's a very good pure boxer. I think he is one of the best boxers. And I said it in many episodes. I think he is the best defensive fighter in the game right now. However, we got to state the facts. The last two fights that he's main evented in, I mean, it's been a little bit of a disappointment to a lot of fans. Now, I didn't think the Artem Harutyunyan fight was that bad. You know what I'm saying? I didn't think it was as bad and as boring as a lot of people proclaimed it to be. Could it have been a lot better? Absolutely, but I don't think it was that bad. However, a lot of fans, we can't ignore that they're starting to lose interest in Shakur Stevenson. So how do you build that interest up? You're not going to do it on a Shakur Stevenson card. You're going to do it on a different card. And this is a good card for him to be a co-main event. Biddle versus Beterbiev is possibly the best fight that is going to be happening next. Obviously, we got Usyk versus Fury too, but we already saw that, and that's not going to be for undisputed no more. This is an undisputed fight between two undefeated light heavyweights, two guys who have made buzz around the entire boxing world, and two guys who everybody has been saying they need to fight each other. And now it's finally going to happen on October 12th in Saudi Arabia. This is a perfect chance for Shakur Stevenson to gain his fan base back. As far as Joe Cordina, it's the comeback because he took a very, very brutal loss. I mean, the guy was 17-0 and he took that massive loss, especially a TKO loss to a guy like Anthony Cacace, who's not known to be a knockout artist. So obviously, that definitely brought him down a lot. And Joe Cordina was a guy that I thought was a very, very good fighter. However, I have a problem with this matchup. See, I like that. I like it for Shakur. I don't like it for Cordina. And the reason why is because for those who don't know, this isn't the first time Cordina's fought at lightweight. He used to be the British Commonwealth lightweight champ. Obviously, that's not a major world title, but to a lot of British fighters, that is a very prestigious title. So I'm not gonna, take away the lineage and the importance of that title. However, you just got knocked out by a guy who's not a knockout artist at featherweight, remind you. So we're gonna bump up and we're gonna fight a lightweight in Shakur Stevenson. Now, even though people say he don't got power, I still think Shakur Stevenson got some knockout punch to him, and I don't like this I don't like this matchup in general because to me it just feels like they're setting up Joe Cordina, and I feel like Joe Cordina deserves a lot more. The fact that he's going from Anthony Cacace all the way to Shakur Stevenson, I don't think that's a good fit. And I'd really love to get your opinions on that, Breezy. I could talk on and on about it. I'm gonna save a little bit for later on in the episode. But first, just your thoughts on the matchup between Shakur Stevenson versus Joe Cordina. How do you feel about it being the co-main for Beterbiev and Bivol? And overall, Do you feel the same that I feel as far as it's possible? It seems like a setup for Joe Cordina, or do you feel a different way and you like this matchup and you could see the benefit going to both fighters once this fight is all over?
I, I agree. This is a nice matchup for Shakur Stevenson. I'm gonna tell y'all why. I did my little study on Joe Cordina. By the way, 17-1, 9 knockouts. Of course, one loss by TKO. When I did my study on Joe Cordina, he has some nice power to him. He's got a nice jab. I've seen times where he presses his jab in, and then sometimes he does have a devastating right hand. Let's not forget that too. His head movement very decent. I wouldn't say it's up to par with a Shakur, but he has decent head movement, and he does cut out the ring pretty well. It's not like you know as lethal. It's not as confounding as Canelo would do it or Terrence Crawford would, but he does cut the ring off pretty well. And so I think this is a great matchup for Shakur Stevenson because what have we been hearing? If Shakur gets in on the puncher or the power puncher, he's a runner, he's a track star, he gonna get on his skates and he's gonna run far. We've been hearing that all along, right? If he gets in there with a power puncher, he's gonna get on his skates, he's gonna do this. But this guy has some power to him. Now, whether that translates, that's neither here or there. That's just something we're going to have to see when the fight happens. But with the style that this guy presents is going to be really interesting because a lot of people, like you said, Mar, a lot of people gave him. And look, this is a Shakur Stevenson video, so knowing it's the Puncher's Point and it's a Shakur Stevenson video, we're more than likely going to have some Shakur Stevenson hate comments in the comment section. I'm calling it right now. But nevertheless, it's going to be interesting because I want to see how Shakur utilizes his abilities against somebody like Joe Cordina. How's he going to react to those punches? When Joe Cordina is trying to pressure him and back him up and whatnot, and let's say Joe Cordina does catch it, because let me not forget, he does have a slick counterpunch style to him. How will Shakur Stevenson take those punches? So I think this really makes up an interesting matchup. Now, as far as Joe Cordina, I think it's really tricky because they always say it's the guys that you never really know or the guys that you really necessarily don't think have a chance usually brings out their all because they have a lot to gain and they really don't have much. When we see big fights and whatnot, we usually think, oh, well, this fight is going to be really, really close. In reality, it'd be devastating. It'd be a complete brutal domination. But you see these high caliber fighters, they get in there with guys who have a losing streak, or they get in there with guys who coming off of knockout losses or recent losses, and they nearly go life and death with them. So it's really tricky. Could they be setting him up? I wouldn't be surprised because it's boxing. But at the same time, though, I wouldn't be surprised if we had another Ozzy Pitbull Cruz situation or another Israel Majumov situation. But nevertheless, as far as Joe Cordina, uh, I don't know. In a way, I can see it's kind of like a setup because, like I said, the decent head movement, his footwork, I wouldn't say his footwork is really up there. His head movement is, like I said, is decent. And Shakur, we know Shakur, he's going to be moving. He's going to be slick. He's going to be all around defensive. So I could see where you're coming from with that point, though. I could see it. But this is definitely a beneficial fight for Shakur, especially on a card like Beterbiev and Bivol.
And I believe that because Shakur Stevenson is no longer with Top Rank, Turki Alalshikh, DAZN, Matchroom Boxing, possibly, obviously he's been in talks with Eddie Hearn. They have to figure out how are we going to do this differently than what mid rank did. Look, we can say all we want about Shakur Stevenson, but Top Rank didn't promote him in the best way either, though. Let's be honest. I mean, after he left junior lightweight, it just seemed to all go down from there. He fought. He had his first lightweight debut. He looked very, very special. And then all of a sudden, we get to Edwin De Los Santos, and we're like, all right, this is a good test for Shakur Stevenson. We see the fight. It was terrible. Then we think, all right, he can bounce back with Artem Harutyunyan. That didn't happen. All three of those guys were good challenges for Shakur. But at the same time, you also had Devin Haney switching back and forth from Top Rank. You had Lomachenko. What happened to that matchup? We never got to see it. So there was a lot of missed opportunities that Top Rank had. Now, Turki Alalshikh has to ask, what is the best way we can maximize Shakur Stevenson? And the answer is pretty simple. After his last two fights, people aren't interested in him no more. So he cannot be the headline right now. What we have to do is we have to give him a platform where it's big enough to put eyes on him, but it's not a platform where he's going to be the star. And this is a perfect example of it. I'm going to be honest, they could have did it on the Terence Crawford Madrimov card as well, considering Terence Crawford, Shakur Stevenson, they got that little bond, and Shakur Stevenson was ready to get back in there early. And judging by the fight with Artem Harutyunyan, it didn't seem like Shakur took that much damage. So they could have did it there, but here we have it on the Beterbiev versus Bivol card. And he's the co-main, which I think it's a good enough co-main to get a lot of people coming in early and a lot of people watching and putting eyes on Shakur. Now, here's the reason why I also like that it's on this card. Take a look at the fights before that. We got Fabio Wardley versus Clark 2, and that fight was very, very, it was possibly a fight of the year candidate when it first happened. So now we get to see that again, and that's going to be happening before the Shakur Stevenson Joe Cordina fight. We have Chris Eubanks Jr. also on this card. And then on top of that, we have Jayo Pataya. So I mean, let's be honest, the boxing power is there. If you're a true boxing fan, you know who those guys are. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know who they are. And I do think that this is a very good way for Shakur Stevenson to gain his fans back, to show them, like, hey, look, I ain't just a runner. I'm not a track star. I'm not Shakur Twitterson. It's a good way for him to come back and be like, y'all must have forgot who I truly am. And I'm going to show it to you against Joe Cordina. And again, going back to the Joe Cordina side, it just seems like they're using him as a tune-up. And I don't think Joe Cordina is a tune-up. I do think he's a very underrated fighter. Now, I'm not saying he's a bum. I'm not saying he's a scrub because he lost to Cacace. But at the same time, to go from featherweight to where you got knocked out, to go to lightweight, to fight somebody like Shakur Stevenson, who's possibly even better than Cacace, it's a big risk for Joe Cordina to even accept that fight. But with Turki, I think here's my problem. I don't have a problem with Turki Alalshikh. But recently, what I've noticed about Turki Alalshikh, that if it doesn't go his way, then he starts to have a little animosity towards a certain fighter. We've seen that with Canelo. We've seen that with a lot of other guys as well. If they don't agree to what he says, then it's not good. Like, for instance, like he said, I'm no longer interested in Crawford versus Canelo because that's not the fight I want. Well, it's not about the fight that you want. It's about the fight that the fans want. And that's the difference. And because Canelo is able to make his own money, because somebody like Tank Davis is able to make their own money, they're not agreeing with the ways that Turki Alalshikh has. Turki Alalshikh, I think, is very focused on making Shakur Stevenson a star, and I believe Turki Alalshikh can also do that. However, I don't think this is the right way to go. I think, and it's kind of tricky because you got to think to yourself, well, what's next for Shakur Stevenson? Where do we bring him from here? And the truth is, you need a fighter who's decent, who's coming off of a few wins to build that legitimacy for Shakur Stevenson. And if he beats Joe Cordina, then we're just going to ask, well, he beat a shell of Joe Cordina. He didn't beat the prime Joe Cordina. Joe Cordina shouldn't have been in the ring with him in the first place. And if he knocks out Joe Cordina, I don't think he gets the same amount of credit that he should. However, I do believe he should get that credit if he does knock out Joe Cordina, regardless. So it's a very, very tricky situation. I'm curious to see how it's going to play out. And again, Joe Cordina, he's a very good fighter. He could shock the world. You know what I'm saying? Like Breezy said, this could be a Madrimov situation. This could be an El Rayo situation. We don't know. However, for me personally, it's hard to have any optimism for Joe Cordina after getting knocked out at featherweight, moving up to lightweight and challenging the WBC champion Shakur Stevenson, who's 22-0 and possibly one of the best pure boxers in the game. I have a lot of skepticism about that. I have a lot of skepticism on why they made that matchup. But Shakur Stevenson's side, this is a very good way to, get him back on the right track to main eventing his own card and making him a star again, putting him up against those big guys like Tank Davis, Devin Haney, Pitbull Cruz. And honestly, Breezy, here's the kicker. Shakur Stevenson, I believe he can move up to 140. I believe that's a possibility. Even though the power hasn't translated to 135, I can see him going up to 140. He goes up to 140. We can see him versus Liam Paro, him versus Sabrina Matias, him versus Devin Haney, which a lot of us have been wanting to see, him versus Tiafimo. He makes his return back to top rank. There's a lot of fights that could happen at 140. So as far as 135, you got Lomachenko. Um, and excuse me, guys, there's the you got Lomachenko. You have help me out here with the 135-pound champions. Obviously, Tank Davis. I didn't forget about
Tank.
Tank Davis. Who?
I was saying Tank.
Ah, dang. And I'm missing one, and it's killing me, man. I'm missing one guy. Tank, Loma, Shakur, and there's one more dude. God, it's killing me, man. It's truly killing me. I'm trying to think of his name. I can't remember.
Beta?
Who? Cepeda's not a
Cepeda?
champion, but I'd like to
I'm
see that fight. I'd like to see that fight. Don't get me wrong. It's tough, man, but
trying to remember who it was too. Yeah.
God, it's tough. I completely forgot. Either way, look.
Excuse us, Punchers Point Nation. We had a brain fart. We don't need to see in the comments.
Yeah,
Relax.
right, right. And Breezy, if you can look it up for me while I finish my point, I really appreciate it. There's some fights that he can make at 135, but there's also a lot of fights that you can make at 140 if Shakur decides to move up that high. So the way I look at it is Shakur Stevenson, there's a lot of things you can do with him, but the problem is because the hype has fallen for Shakur Stevenson, it's kind of hard to figure out how you navigate him from there. And again, Williams Zepeda was a big pick. Pitbull Cruz was a big fight that you could make. I mean, you can go down the list and really think about the fights that you could make with Shakur Stevenson, but the problem is, after all the hype was lost with him, this is why it's called the come up. For Joe Cordina, it's called the comeback because it seems like the odds are slim for Joe Cordina to win this fight. But if he does win this fight, best believe it's a comeback. So I truly believe that with Shakur Stevenson, he's on a lot. Again, there's so many things you can do with him, but at the same time, there's so many bad things that can happen with his career from here on out if you don't make the right choices. And Joe Cordina, I think that's a good fight for him. However, a lot of people might not see it as a good fight. They might see it as Joe Cordina taking a second straight loss, and they might see it as Joe Cordina not being the guy for Shakur Stevenson to elevate him if he does win. And for Joe Cordina, same thing. Shakur Stevenson, he beat Shakur Stevenson. Joe Cordina is everybody's hero because Shakur Stevenson is not the most well-liked boxer right now. And overall, I just think the matchup in itself, I think it's very skeptical, but at the same time, it could be a matchup that could make for a very good fight. And you know what? Enough of me yapping. Breezy finally got the last champion. Who is it, Breezy? Tell me.
Baron G.
Baranchik. I knew it was another Ukrainian. I knew it, and I completely forgot his name. Baranchik. Now that I think about it, both of them are on top rank, I believe. So why? I don't know, man. Shakur is gonna have to make a return to top rank soon. That's all I gotta say. I'll continue to tune into the YouTube. Make sure you guys continue to definitely tune into the podcast. Come season 4, we gonna have some fun stuff for you on our podcast. We're thinking about doing some Reddit reviews. We're thinking about reacting to those, giving you a lot of fun content for the podcast as well. And overall, as of right now, you should be tuning into the podcast. Again, you're at work, make sure you tune into the podcast. Again, we want a good audience on the podcast as well, just like we're getting a great audience on the YouTube. And we do want to say appreciate all of our subscribers, all the watchers, the listeners, the good, the bad, all the comments in itself about the Puncher's Point and our opinions and thoughts. We really appreciate all of the audience and the feedback that we're getting on there. And we just want to definitely start growing that onto the podcast as well. Social media is Instagram, Twitter, Threads, you name it, we got it. So make sure y'all continue to just keep on tuning in to everything the Puncher's Point. Again, the reason why y'all should be tuning in is not because of us, but it's because the content that y'all want, we will deliver it for you. So with that being said, make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.